Hello, welcome to Influencers. Today we're honored to have Speaker of the Nevada Assembly, Jason Frierson. How are you?
I'm well.
Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Oh, my pleasure. Tell us about yourself, how you got to Nevada.
Right, I'm born and raised in Compton, California, and was blessed to have a football scholarship to come to Nevada. So I didn't even know there was a university in Reno back then.
Wow.
But I was able to get a scholarship to go to UNR undergrad and came down here to Las Vegas for law school. So Nevada's been my home for some 30 years, both north and the south.
Who's had the greatest influence on you, both personally and in career?
Well, I would say personally, certainly my mom. I mean, my parents were very engaged, which was much more important on my block in my neighborhood. And so I would say certainly my parents and my mom in particular, who still has a great amount of influence on me. Professionally, Barbara Buckley has been tremendously influential for me, both professionally in the legal profession, but also as a policymaker and as a legislator.
Jason, tell us about your journey to get into the political world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I find myself reflecting back on my childhood, feeling like I was always in politics, navigating between neighborhoods, and that sort of thing. I've been class president almost every year since 6th grade. It was kind of a natural thing for me. So when I became student body president at University of Nevada, Reno, that opened a different door in Nevada. It's such a small state. I got to know Richard Bryan and Frankie Sudell Papa and some former student body presidents that went on to do other things. So I started advocating on behalf of Clark County in the legislature, and you don't get a call from the speaker often where she said, I'm terming out and I'd love for you to replace me in District 8. You don't say no to those calls. So
right.
I took that call, and it's been great ever since.
Yeah. Would you consider yourself business friendly? Business friendly?
I do consider myself small business friendly. It's an interesting juggle to try to satisfy all of our partners in the community. But I think if you think about it, small businesses employ collectively more than our large businesses.
Absolutely.
And there's always legislation that people don't realize might have a disparate impact on small businesses. We were able to stop some of those pieces of legislation last session. And I'm looking forward to this upcoming session. In fact, one of the bills I've already submitted is the creation of a small business advocate office in the Lieutenant Governor's office.
Right.
So we want to continue to have those conversations and hear from small businesses about how we can help and how we can avoid unintended consequences.
And I can tell you that a lot of my members thanked you for last session and are actually encouraged that you're in the leadership role and believe that you will be business friendly again.
Right,
so
absolutely.
Very grateful for that, because you're right. It is the engine, right? It's the engine that runs our economy.
Exactly.
That's great. More with our Speaker of the Assembly in a moment. Welcome back to Influencers. Tell us about what the Speaker's office does that maybe people might not know.
It's interesting. So as Speaker, I'm in charge of 42 members of the Assembly, both parties. It's part of the obligation to lead that body.
Sounds fun.
Well, it can be challenging, but I also still have to tend to my own district. And I don't know that people realize I'm an assemblyman in District 8 in the southwest part of the valley, and I have to tend to my own constituents just as much as the rest of the state. So it's a balance, and I don't necessarily approach it any differently than my other colleagues, but I have this extra responsibility of managing the whole body.
I recently saw you at Hope for Prisoners, and I've seen you a couple times, but this was an emotional one, and I happened to be sitting behind you, and I saw the emotion. I actually appreciated the emotion. Do you believe there's equal justice for minorities?
I think that's always going to be a challenge. Keep in mind, I'm from Compton, California, where I think inner city fights for justice in many ways began, at least on the West Coast. So I think that there's frequently a disparate impact on communities of color. Often well-intended policies have a disparate impact. So I think we have to bring all of our partners, including law enforcement, to the table so that they see that impact and we can make adjustments to how we implement those policies so that they don't have such a negative impact in a large way on communities of color.
Yeah. And tell me why you were emotional at the graduation.
Well, criminal justice reform, and in particular diversion and reentry programs, have been a passion of mine since I advocated for Clark County. I was a public defender for nearly 8 years. I saw firsthand how we lost out on opportunities to get people to give people the tools to reenter the community. So it's something that I felt strong about for years. We've advanced great policy, and we're going to advance some more. But that particular day was especially emotional with a couple of stories that I don't think there was a dry eye in the room.
Yeah, I mean, you had a lady who was shot by a police officer
Right.
who wanted to say, I'm sorry to him.
Right, and thanked them.
And I believe that, think about this, I believe 2 people were saved that day because I spoke to the officer and he had a heavy burden on him. No police officer wants to shoot anybody,
Right.
as far as I believe.
Right.
And so that was an amazing moment.
Well, and I'm sure it's not often that someone in her position says thank you to law enforcement.
right.
So it was a very moving moment.
Yeah. We will be back in a moment with Jason Frierson. Yeah, that was. Hello, welcome back to Influencers. Tell us what your priorities are for this upcoming session.
You know, I think that our priorities are shared priorities with Governor Sisolak, and the first is supporting public education and our teachers. They spend so much time with our children in this community, and we have to give them the tools they need to be successful. I think we also want to support economic security for all Nevadans. That certainly means things like not prevailing wage, but living wages, but we all are talking about that, but we also want to talk about equal pay for equal work.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that everybody's able to support their families in a meaningful way with all partners at the table. So I think the third thing that's really important is healthcare and trying to make sure that Nevadans have access to quality healthcare. We've done some things in the past dealing with transparency for pharmaceuticals, but we still have work to do to make sure that our community is healthy.
And from a chamber standpoint, as president of the Latin Chamber, you know, all we ask for is, would you be willing to sit down with, business owners before major, sweeping things happen? Just hear their side, and maybe there's a nice compromise in there. You're willing to do that?
Well, my style has always been a collaborative one. That's part of what I think I bring to the table. We are a citizens legislature, and to me, that means that we should listen more than we talk, and we're not there because of our own expertise. We're there to be a voice for people, and people need to reach out to us and give us their perspective so that we can make informed decisions. I will always have an open door, and I'll always be collaborative in making our decisions to avoid unintended consequences.
That's good stuff. I know the governor spoke a lot about education. How can we help education this session?
Well, I think that we all have to stand up and recognize that education and public education in particular touches all of us. And so it impacts the community. So if kids are not getting quality education, they're doing other things in the community that impact all of us. We do. So businesses get broken into.
That's right.
Our workforce is not as up on getting jobs and entering the workforce, both skilled, and labor. So I think we have to all advocate for it. We did in 2015 come together as a community as a whole to advance some good policies, and I think we're going to have to continue to make sure that we all are at the table to support our kids and our teachers.
That's excellent. We will be back with our last segment with Speaker of the Assembly, Jason Frierson. Hello and welcome back. Jason, tell us how the Hispanic community can have their voices heard.
Well, I think first of all, the Hispanic community, like every community in our valley, needs to be willing to make calls and hold politicians accountable. If we say one thing and do another, I think there needs to be a consequence to that. I've taken it serious. My number 2, my majority leader is, I believe, the first Latino majority leader, female majority leader in particular in the history of the state. So I've surrounded myself with leaders that reflect our community. I also have 2 chairs, Sandra Howdigi and Edgar Flores, who are chairing committees for me, and they're part of the leadership team. So I think being at the table, both from a leadership perspective, where we recruit and train up and move up candidates, and also being engaged in the community and making sure that we're accessible and receptive, I think is how we allow our citizens to have the greatest impact in the policy that we advance.
And doing shows like this opens up a lot of doors. It makes them feel like they can approach you and make you more approachable. So I'm grateful that you've done this. Do you feel good about your relationship with the Hispanic community?
I do. I feel good. I grew up in an area where majority of my friends didn't speak English. So I was essentially having to immerse into another culture. So I don't want to downplay the need to always recognize you have room to grow and work to do. There are differences in our community and trust in government, and we always have to work on that to make sure that folks not only feel welcome, but feel like their voice is actually going to be taken seriously and implemented. So I think it's important that I always work on that, and I'll continue to work on that, but I'm surrounding myself with people that also help the community see we mean business.
How closely do you expect to be working with the governor?
I expect to work very close with the governor. In fact, I already have been. We talk regularly along with the Senate Majority Leader. I think it's important that we stay on the same page. Folks are concerned about what's going to happen when Democrats are in charge of both houses and the executive. I think we have an opportunity to show the state and the country what we can do responsibly with this kind of power. So we're going to work very closely to make sure we have a productive session.
I like that you use the word opportunity because I see it that way. I see this as an opportunity where maybe some people are saying they're nervous because of business friendliness and this and that. And I think it's an opportunity for you guys to really show, here we are.
I hope
care
that
about
we're
our community.
Exactly. And I hope we're going to be an example for the country and other states of how we can be responsible and lead in a productive way.
Lastly, how far do you think out? I mean, what's your future? What do you want to do next?
I of course, I think about those things. But for me as a leader, I think one of the best things that I can do is lead as if I'm not running for anything else. Now, I know I'm going to have opportunities in the future, but I can't do this job based on whatever's next for me. And so, I'm relieved that we have Governor Sisolak. So that's one less decision that we have to make as a party for some time. But, I'm going to do this job the best that I can do in this job for today. And I think that the rest of it will play out organically.
That's excellent. I want to thank Speaker Jason Frierson for joining me today. And I hope you've enjoyed this show of influencers where you have access to the people that really influence our state. Until next time, stay motivated and stay inspired.
That's good, man.
Awesome. That was good.
That's good.